Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. Really excited. We're going to have a big group today
Good
for
morning,
our
everyone.
virtual field
Welcome
trip
to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout.
to the Toucan Rescue Ranch in Costa Rica. For those who aren't familiar with the ranch, it was established in 2004. It's focused on the care, rehabilitation, and release of national wildlife. The Toucan Rescue Ranch provides sanctuary while giving treatment, rehabilitation, and when possible, release to their natural environment. So they specialize in all kinds of native animals like toucans, sloths, owls, but also can sometimes have a large array of wildlife from weasels, porcupines, cats, kinkajous, parrots, and more. Now we're going to meet Andy in just 1 second, but before we do that, I want to meet some of our live classrooms and give them a chance to give us a big shout out. So let's get started first by going to Alaska. We have Mrs. Carton's group hanging out with us. How's everyone doing today? All right, awesome group there. Mrs. Clark's group hanging out with us in Vancouver, British Columbia. How's everyone doing? All right. Didn't work quite for me there, but let's try Mr. Kaczynski's class joining us in Michigan. Let's try their microphone. How's everyone doing? All right, awesome. Let's jump now. Mrs. Foster's group joining us in Alabama. How are you guys doing today? All right. There we go. All right. Let's see. Who do we still have to meet? Let's go to Irvine, California. Mrs. Haboen's group. How are you guys doing today? All right, perfect. Mrs. Holden's group is joining us in Alberta. How are you guys doing today? All right, excellent. So as you can see, we have an awesome group of classrooms joining us live on camera today. They're going to get their chance to ask some questions. I'm going to give a quick reminder to any classrooms who are tuning in via YouTube today. Use the chat sidebar. Let us know who you are and where you're watching from. We'll work in some questions. And yeah, I think it's time to get to the main event. So we're heading over to the Toucan Rescue Ranch now. We have Andy joining us. He's going to be our virtual tour guide as we explore and meet some of the animals. Andy, it's so great to have you joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
All right, awesome. And Andy, I believe you've been at the ranch since February.
That is correct. I'm a volunteer here. I've been here since February. I'm a former bird keeper in off-exhibit bird breeding at the San Diego Zoo.
All right.
Now I'm here at Toucan Rescue Ranch as a volunteer. And let me talk to you a little bit about Toucan Rescue Ranch. So we were founded in 2004, like you previously said, and our primary mission is to rescue and rehabilitate and free back into the wild native Costa Rican wildlife. Like I said, we started in 2004. Our primary emphasis was toucans. And the people that bring us the animals from the Costa Rican government, they're called Manai. And they thought we were doing so well with toucans that they thought they would try a sloth on us. And so our founder, Leslie Howe, and one of the vets here in Costa Rica got together and they came up with a plan on how to hand rear baby sloths that we receive. And they worked out a diet, and that diet primarily is goat's milk and Pedialyte when they're neonates, when they're little babies and they need to be fed milk still. So we're here just to basically make sure that these animals have a bright future. We can re-release them back into the wild. We do specialize in toucans as well and owl species. Like we said earlier, we do take all kinds of Costa Rican wildlife. Here in Costa Rica, one of the main issues is with habitat fragmentation. We get a lot of sloths here that either get electrocuted or hit by cars. And we work to get them back on their feet and get them sent back out in the wild. We have a couple of places where we release sloths back in the wild. We have a release site over in Sarapiquí, which is over the hill from us here. And we also work with the Sloth Institute down in Manuel Antonio. And we're partnered with them for an organization called Saving Sloths Together. And some of our sloths go down there as well. Some of the natural history on sloths, they're actually related to armadillos. And we're going to show you some armadillos here. They're related to armadillos and anteaters. There's 6 species of sloths in the wild. Two of them are here in Costa Rica. We have three-toeds and two-toed sloths. And the two-toed sloths are basically, they're a larger sloth. They're found pretty much from sea level up to kind of high, up to 11,000 feet, while the three-fingered sloth or three-toed sloth is found at lower elevations. Part of the something interesting about sloths is they're called two-toed and three-toed, but in actuality they have, it's a translation error because dedo, it means finger and toe in Spanish. So a two-toed sloth is actually two-fingered. All sloths have three toes. So if any of you guys out there ever want to run Trivial Pursuit, you can ask somebody asks you the question, how many how many toes does a two-toed sloth have? They actually have three toes. So it's a translation error. So we're trying to change that a little bit. We usually call them two-fingered and three-fingered sloths. You can also tell the difference between the two-fingered and three-fingered. The two-fingered are much furrier, and they're more of a brownish, warm brown color. They have little piggy snout, which you're looking at right now. They also have sharp canines. They have 4 canines in front that they use those for eating. The other species did not have those. Another difference between the two species is that the two-fingered, which we're looking at right now, is more omnivorous. And omnivorous means that they eat a little bit of everything. So these guys, while primarily eat leaves, they also will opportunistically eat a bird egg or maybe a lizard or some insects or some fruit. While the other species, the three-toed, they are primarily vegetarian and they feed on everything, green leaves and whatnot. They're known for their slow metabolism. Sloths can take up to a month to digest one meal. They are always in the trees. They only come down from the trees to go to the bathroom, and that happens a week to every 2 weeks. And when they come down from the trees, that's when they're really vulnerable to attacks from native species, but also introduced species like feral dogs. We get a lot of dog attack victims here of our sloths. Another issue with sloths here in Costa Rica is we get a lot of ones that are electrocuted. They don't cover the power lines here. So we do get in quite a few electrocuted sloths. Sometimes they're hit by cars too. We also take in a lot of babies. We get babies from either mothers that were electrocuted or killed, or they were abandoned by their mother, or they were prematurely born. And we have facilities here where we're able to rear them up until they're adults. Usually takes about 2 years. And they go out to our release site where they're put into soft release cages. And that soft release is where we have the door open, basically. We feed them inside the enclosure, and the sloth can come and go as they wish. We put radio collars on them so we can track them at night. This species of sloth is much more nocturnal. They sleep in the wild, about 12 to 15 hours a day. Here with us, a lot of times they'll sleep about 10 hours a day. Some of the babies are a little bit more active. And so these sloths you're looking at now, these guys are getting up there. They'll be ready for release pretty soon. Another interesting thing about sloths is they can actually swim. Most people don't realize that about them. They're good swimmers, even though they move kind of slow. In addition, God, there's so much I can tell you about these guys. Their fur is really unique. Especially the species is a lot heavier, but in the sloth's fur, there are species of algae and moths and beetles that live only on the sloth only. There are species that are unique to sloths. Sloths also, one of the issues with them, for them becoming rare, is they're taken out of the wild for the pet trade. These would not make a good pet animal. For every 100 sloths that's taken out of the wild for the pet trade, about 90% of them die. Most people would not be able to take care of one of these in captivity. As cute as they look, and they are cute looking, they would not make a good pet. Another issue with them is habitat fragmentation. And as you guys are aware of the rainforest burning in the Amazon basin, that happens throughout Central America. So it's really, sloths are dependent on a healthy forest for their survival. So without a healthy forest, there won't be any sloths. They're fairly,
Andy,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Jump in for a second. I have a quick question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, I know the main goal is when the sloths do come in to have them rehabilitated and released to the wild. What kind of steps do you take to make sure that can happen?
Okay, so what we do is they'll come in, we'll assess them. We'll assess them where they are, depending, like, it depends if it's an adult or a baby. For example, if we bring in an adult sloth that's been, for example, electrocuted, we immediately put it in the clinic and we do kind of a triage on it to get it stabilized. And that animal stays here as long as it needs to until it's healed. And then we return them directly back to Manai, which is the Fish and Wildlife branch of the Costa Rican government. And then they take the sloth back directly to where they found it. Now, for some of our babies here, we get in baby sloths, what we will do with them is we rear them up, and they go through different stages of school. They go through preschool, elementary school, high school, college. And in those classes or in those schools, we teach them how to climb, how to find food, how to survive in the wild. And they don't get to progress up to the next class until they've completed certain tasks. So we have things like, we have little jungle gyms for them to teach them how to climb. We'll do ropes between rocking chairs. I'm gonna work over here really quick. We got an anteater out for you guys right now. It's a tamandua. And these guys are related to sloths. If you were actually to look at a skeleton of these guys, you can see how closely related they are. They both, the big giveaway on them too is their claws on the front and rear legs. Anyway, so like a baby sloth, we will work with it. And in the wild, a baby sloth will stay with its mom for up to 2 years. And here what we'll do is about 2 years of age, we'll send them over to the release site where they're in a soft release cage, these big enclosures, and they're radio collared, and the door's left open. They're fed in the enclosures. The sloth can come and go as much as it wants. Eventually, they just leave, and they go out into the jungle, and we track them for 5 months. The collars are on them. The biologists track them at night. So the biologists are working night shifts. So they'll follow them through the forest at night. And the sloths don't really travel too far. But they can check on them, see how they're doing. If there's any issues, they can bring them back in, reassess them, and then re-release them at a later date. You know, a lot of times too, we'll have sloths that are amputees. Just because a sloth's an amputee doesn't mean we can't release it back into the wild. So anyway, so they're tracked for like 5 months or so we know how they're doing. When the radio collar starts to die, the sloth will come down from the tree to go to the bathroom, and the collar's removed, and then they're on their way back to the wild. You got that?
All right, awesome. Great to have the special guests, the armadillo and the anteaters, making appearances. There's some pretty amazing animals that you're taking care of at the rescue ranch.
Yeah, they're really cool.
So Andy, I'm curious, and I'm sure the students are as well, as you're doing amazing conservation work for native species in Costa Rica. How is it that you're able to do it? Where does the funding come from?
Oh, we're a nonprofit, so we are completely dependent on donations from people. We have tours here of our facility, and the money from the tours go directly to animal care and veterinary care for the animals here in our facility. All the employees here are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. And we have things, you know, guests will come in sometimes, they'll be enamored with a pet. We've had guests pay for animal enclosures here. We don't get any assistance from the Costa Rican government. We're completely dependent on outside funding. So if any of the students out there are interested in doing some fundraising for us, or maybe symbolically adopting a sloth with their classes, that'd be great.
All right, very cool. And then, is there ever a time the sloth is maybe, you know, was injured in the field, and maybe it can't be released back into the wild?
Yes, we do have a few sloths here that cannot be released back into the wild. And what we do is they're permanent residents here, and we really work hard to make sure they have a full enriched life. So, and that would be any of the animals we have here that are permanent residents. We really work hard to make sure that they have a lot of enrichment in their environment. You know, when you take on an exotic animal or a wild animal, and you need to take care of that for the rest of its life, it's our responsibility to make sure that that animal has an enriched full life and is well taken care of. But not just with food, it also means having a good enclosure for it, have interesting things for it to do. A lot of times we'll change the enclosure interiors, we'll put in new perching, we try different food items out on them, things like that. Another thing I forgot to mention too is these guys in the wild are totally solitary. They do not, basically don't like each other a whole lot. When they're younger like this, they would be in proximity of their mom. So they seem a little bit more tolerant of each other when they're younger like this. But as they get older, they don't even recognize us. A lot of them, you know, the people say, how do we release them back in the wild? Do they get imprinted on people? And they don't imprint, which makes them an ideal animal for release. And they're on the conservation aspect of it, they're technically not threatened, but with habitat destruction and everything that's going on in the world today, I have a tendency to look at pretty much any species of animal and just consider that it will probably be endangered within the next couple of years. So conservation of all species is really important at this point in the world.
Absolutely, Andy. No question whatsoever. So I'm thinking that it's about time that we meet some of our classrooms and get some questions. How do you feel about that, Andy?
That'd be great. Looking forward to it.
Right, perfect. Actually, another question just kind of popped into my head, thinking about naming the classrooms. Do you name the sloths when they come in, or is it easier not to so they can be released? And
we name them. It's basically for identification purposes. So, like if we have a chart, each animal has its own chart. So we do give them names. A lot of times we have groups that will name sloths if they adopt one, they can name it. And a lot of times too, we'll have we'll have groups of juveniles in at the same time. So we'll name them after themes like Game of Thrones or Friends, the television show. So we have like Phoebe and Chandler and Joey, things like that. But it's basically for identification purposes only. We don't really try to do any anthropomorphizing or I would tell them about that. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, I know we're gonna have some classrooms out there with lots of questions about our friends today. So let's start meeting some of those classrooms and getting those questions. We're gonna go to Anchorage, Alaska first. Mrs. Carton has some students hanging out with her. I'll turn their mic on and let's steal a question. Looks like a nice big group there in Anchorage.
Do sloths sleep upside down?
I didn't hear the question.
I'd have to say it louder. Do sloths sleep upside down?
Yeah, some of them will kind of hug a tree, or they'll sleep in the crotch of a couple of branches of a tree. But the two-fingered, like these guys, do hang upside down a lot of time. Did I answer your question for you?
All right, that was great. Good question. Let's see, Mrs. Clark's class, grade 3 is joining us in Vancouver, British Columbia. Let's try that microphone again. You guys didn't get to give us a big shout out, so go ahead and give us a big hello before we get started.
Let's say hello.
Hello.
Hey guys.
What's a question to ask folks? That's you when you come up. You sit right here and speak loudly in front of the camera.
Will they eat fruit?
Sometimes in the wild, they might eat a little bit of fruit. The two-fingereds will. The three-fingereds don't. The three-fingereds are primarily just eat greens like leaves. Here, when we have them at the ranch, we don't feed them any fruit. So some of the youngsters, we will start them on steamed carrots and green beans because they're kind of soft and they're easy for them to chew.
All right, good question. I'm going to jump to YouTube. I want to give a quick reminder, anybody tuning in live on YouTube, don't forget there's a chat sidebar. Let us know who you are and where you're watching from and send us in some questions. So I'm going to give a shout out. We've got third graders joining us from Canopolis, North Carolina. We've also got some third and fourth graders in Stratford, Ontario. So here in Canada, not too far from me. And let's start off with a question from our group of third graders in North Carolina. This is a sloth physiology question. They're wondering how come the blood doesn't rush to their head when they're hanging upside down?
Oh, good question. That one I don't know the answer to, but I could find out for you really quick. I can get an answer for you. Blood rushing to their head.
All right, we'll put a pin in that one until we've got an answer, but let's grab another live classroom. So this time we're going to head over to, let's go to Michigan this time. We're going to go to our grade 2s joining us in Canton. Let me get their microphone turned on and we are ready.
I know sloths like leaves. Do they have another favorite treat?
Another favorite treat?
Yeah.
We do give them as a treat. We'll give them hibiscus flowers. They love hibiscus flowers. It's like chocolate for them.
All right, boys and girls. So if you don't know what those look like, they're kind of big, pink, almost puffy flowers. And during our first event with the hangout, we saw a group of the two-fingered sloths absolutely devouring those hibiscus flowers. So I think they're a treat that they definitely enjoy.
Obviously, they like scratching too, as you can see right now.
Who doesn't? All right, let's go to Mrs. Holden's class, joining us in Spruce Grove, Alberta, some grade 3s there. Let's turn their microphone on and we'll grab a question.
How do sloths go slow?
How do they what? I'm sorry?
Why do they go so slow?
Oh, that's because their metabolism is so slow. So if it takes, like I said earlier, it takes about a month for them to digest a leaf or a meal. So their metabolism's really slow. So that's why they move so slow, because it's they can't afford to expend too much energy. Also, their diet is not really calorie dense. Not a whole lot of calories in the food they eat. So they eat a little bit all the time. But they do move slow because their metabolism is really slow.
All right, really cool. And that's quite a interesting fact you shared with us, using the bathroom only about once a week.
Yes, a sloth, an adult sloth, can hold up to a liter of urine in its body.
Wow, so pretty much as big as 2 of those water containers that most classrooms, those reusable ones, they'll have on their desks. That's a lot of water.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, let's jump to Mrs. Foster's group. They're hanging out with us in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Let's get her microphone turned on.
Go ahead.
All right. What impact does deforestation and poaching have on the sloths, and what is being done to protect them?
Loaded question. So they're dependent on forests. They're completely dependent on forests. So any form of deforestation, cutting trees down, doesn't, it really basically destroys their home. They have no place to live. They're dependent on forests. So a healthy forest is what a sloth needs to survive. Here in Costa Rica, they have quite a few national parks set aside. There's lots of programs. There's lots of, actually, there's a lot of local interest here in protecting the environment in Costa Rica. So the people here are very aware of what's going on, and awareness about what's going on in the environment is one of the best ways to protect it. Other things that people can do in other parts of the world would be to donate money to conservation groups, have class projects. Don't eat products that are dependent upon deforestation. For example, red meat that's produced in Latin America. That's a direct byproduct of deforestation. They have to cut the trees down to make beef. Some industries like coffee and chocolate actually can work in harmony with native populations of jungle wildlife, because, for example, coffee can be shade grown. So they can plant things like trees that sloths would feed on. Same with chocolate. They can plant Cecrophia trees in certain areas that shade the chocolate, and it also provides homes and food for the sloths.
All right.
Another thing you guys can do is think about conservation in your own backyard. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up the work Costa Rica is doing, and how, switched on people are to the need to protect the environment, because it's pretty impressive that around 28% of Costa Rican land has been set aside for national parks. There's not a lot of other countries that can say that.
Yeah. Part of the problem too is, like, a lot of countries have really good programs and a lot of good laws on the books for protecting forests. It would be the enforcement of the laws, which is really key. And a lot of the enforcement comes down for even just people here in Costa Rica. They see their neighbors that have native Costa Rica wildlife as a pet. And so people will call Manai and have the animals confiscated, because here in Costa Rica, it's illegal to have any native wildlife as a pet here.
All right, well, let's take a trip to Irvine, California now, to Mrs. Habone's grade 5 class. Let me get their microphone turned on, and we'll steal a question.
How do you acclimate a new sloth into your sanctuary?
How do we acclimate it? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so it depends on the age. So if it's an adult sloth that comes in that, for example, has been electrocuted or attacked by a dog, that animal for the most part is going to be kept by itself. It's not going to be interacting with other sloths. And in the wild, sloths don't really interact with each other. Here, when we get babies in, if we have 2 or 3 babies that come in at the same time or around the same time, we will keep them together. We keep them in tubs or baskets where they can kind of hug and hold on to each other. And they're really good about socializing with each other when they're at a young age. In the wild, they would basically be holding on to mom. And we don't really have a mom sloth here for them to hold on, so they hug each other. As they get older, they really don't want a lot to do with each other, and they'll tolerate each other, but they don't really want to hang out with each other. They're solitary animals. I hope that answered that properly for you guys.
Oh, that was awesome. I do want to give a quick reminder to any classrooms, whether you're joining us live on camera or you are on YouTube, take some pictures, post them to Twitter, tag us, of course, and also use the handle @Toucan Rescue, because we'd love to see pictures of the class in action. I'm going to grab a couple of questions from YouTube right now, so we have lots of good questions coming in. We've got Miss Rhodes' 3rd grade class. They're joining us, and they are wondering if sloths are prey to any other animals.
They can be, yeah. Large species of hawks and eagles will feed on them. Some of the larger owl species, jaguars, some of the larger cats, but that's about it. There isn't a whole lot of meat on a sloth. They're basically mostly stomach and tendon and fur. They have huge stomachs. They have large 4-chambered stomachs, but there isn't a whole lot of muscle mass on them. Their tendons are really strong. That's what makes them, it gives them the ability to hang in the trees.
All right, and stealing another question from online, this is Hearn Smith's group, is wondering how many babies are usually born at once when a sloth gives birth?
A mom sloth will have 1 baby at a time, and she's pregnant with the baby for about 11 months.
All right.
And then the baby stays with mom for up to 2 years.
All right, excellent. Let's take a swing through and visit some of our live classrooms and see if they have a follow-up question for us. So let's start with Mrs. Clark's group in Vancouver. Your microphone is on.
Question?
Do sloths like
Speak loudly.
to swim a lot?
They can swim. It's not something they do frequently, but if they come down to the ground and let's say the jungle's flooded after heavy rain, they can swim. During the breeding season, a male sloth will swim to find a girlfriend. If they do come down, they are really good swimmers though. A lot of them live in mangrove forests as well. So for them to travel from one point to another, sometimes they'll have to swim.
All right.
And
so
they can hold their breath for quite a while as well.
Okay, so it's more like if they have to do it, they wouldn't really be doing it for fun.
Exactly.
Perfect. Let's go to Alberta with Mrs. Holden's group and see if they have another question for us.
You remember your question? We're wondering if sloths can be trained.
Ooh, you know what? They're a wild animal. I don't think they can.
Yeah, and it would be, I mean, to the goal of the center to get them back into the wild, definitely the little contact you have, probably the better.
Exactly, yeah. Now, we can't train them to do things like we can encourage their natural behaviors. For example, like they're going to reach for leaves in the wild. And so what we do is we have these clothes hangers that kind of move around here in Costa Rica. And that stimulates them or gives them basically the same activities they would need to find a leaf in the wild. So we do things like that for training them, but teaching them like behaviors that wouldn't be natural to them, I don't think that's possible.
All right, let's take another trip to Irvine, California. Mrs. Habone, your microphone is on again if you guys have a follow-up.
Animals you have right now?
Now, oh my gosh, that we have quite a few. We have about 200. Plus, we have lots of parrots. We have toucans. We have lots of owls.
All right, we lost a little bit of that answer, but it sounded like you told us you have about 200 different animals right now.
That's correct. Yes, 200.
All right. That, I can only imagine, is a lot of hard work, a lot of preparing meals, a lot of scheduling that you guys have to do at the center. So volunteers are probably pretty darn important.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very important we have volunteers. They run the place.
All right, excellent. Well, let's jump over and take another question from...
If you look really close, you can see the one sloth eating right now. You might be able to...
All right, Andy, can you try that again? The signal's just breaking up on us a little bit.
Can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. You're back now. We lost you for a minute.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look really close, we got a sloth eating right in front of you. You might be able to see some of their teeth.
All right, perfect. I was just turning on the microphone.
Okay, I'm back.
Class
You guys still
in
hear?
Michigan if
Okay.
they had another question.
I wanted to tell you, our class has collected 126 already, and we are still collecting more. And my question is, I learned that there is an ecosystem on a sloth. Do they eat the algae, some algae or bugs that live on them?
All right, Andy, did you catch that question?
Your question was kind of broken up, but I think... Was that correct?
So well, there are two things. First, they were telling us they've already been fundraising. They've raised $126 so far for the rescue ranch, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
And then his
Yeah, that's
question was
great.
about,
Thank you.
yeah, his question was about the ecosystem on the back of the sloths. Do the sloths ever take advantage of that and eat some of the algae?
They do. They can lick their fur for nutrients. Their fur, their hair follicle is hollow, so the algae grows inside the fur, but they still can lick it and get some nitrogen and other nutrients off of it. The algae is really interesting because it camouflages them too, so it makes them very difficult to see in the wild.
All right. Well, first of all,
But it's basically twofold. They provide a home for the algae. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say that's awesome. I knew they had their own ecosystem, but I did not know that they could take advantage of it by licking for some extra nutrients. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then a huge thanks, obviously, to our group hanging out in Canton, Michigan. That's amazing, the donation that you've raised so far. And that's going to help out a lot of the animals down at the ranch in Costa Rica.
Thank you so much.
All right, so our signal's getting a little choppy. It is obviously a little tricky sometimes to get cell phone signal at the location, but I'm going to turn on Mrs. Foster's microphone and see if they have another question for us.
How can high school students help with your organization?
How can high school students help our organization? was that the question?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Fundraising and maybe symbolically adopting a sloth, raising funds for us. You can do it through bake sales, just actually raising public awareness of us, that we're here and the work we're doing. And, donors, secure funds for animal care. And we also have social media. You guys can always look us up on social media. You can like us. People know we're here and the work we're doing.
All right. So those are some great things that you can do, especially like the social media one. I know a lot of people have their different sites, so you can share the work that the ranch is doing. And I think to any student out there, I think it's really important to remember that even something as simple as telling somebody else what you learned about sloths today, how they are in trouble, how they do need help, and that there's great groups like Toucan Rescue Ranch that are working to protect them, that can go a long way, just kind of sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, excellent. You know, another thing too is once you guys are 18, come on down and volunteer with us. We're
All right, you
always
grab the next
welcome to have people.
All right, Andy. Unfortunately, the cell phone signal is starting to waver on us a little, but you know, if you missed a classrooms, what he was mentioning was that at 18 years old, you can come down to Costa Rica and volunteer at the ranch. Andy, if you can still hear me, how many volunteers do you think you have a year that come from outside of Costa Rica?
We get up.
I would say 100.
Yeah, about 100 per year.
About 100 per year? That's pretty good.
I'm
yeah,
not sure.
Awesome. And then is it anywhere
Yes,
from?
sir, that's correct.
Yeah, and is it anywhere from, you know, a few days to a few weeks? How long do people usually stay?
We ask for a month minimum, and they can stay longer too. You're always welcome to stay longer.
All right, let's take a quick look online, see if we can grab another YouTube question here from our groups. Let's see. We've got a question here from a class. They're wondering about the lifespan of sloths. How long do they generally live in the wild?
In the wild, they can live up to about 20 years. In captivity, one of the oldest sloths in captivity was 43 when it passed away. Are you there? The signal's dropping off. I know, no, he knows. He's still there. Point hold.
Andy, any luck? Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now, yeah.
All right. Well, Andy, I think this is a good time while the signal is getting a little sketchy on us to wrap things up for today. So first of all, I want to give you a huge thanks for being such an awesome virtual tour guide today, introducing us to the sloths, the issues, as well
you're
as
welcome.
teaching
Thank
us a
you.
bit about the natural history.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you again. We're looking forward to another trip to the Toucan Rescue Ranch in October. Last thing I'll do today is I'm going to turn all the microphones on, and I'm going to give the classrooms a chance. If you guys want to give a big goodbye and thank you before we sign off for today. So it's going to get loud. All right.
Thanks, you guys.
Once again, everybody, thanks so much for today. We're going to sign off. Huge thank you again to Toucan Rescue Ranch, and we look forward to our hangout next month.